The voice seemed distant at first. Gregory Fraser groaned as consciousness slowly returned. His eyelids felt heavy, but eventually one opened. Good, he's waking up, a paramedic said. Greg blinked at the bright lights above him. Welcome back, the medic continued. I'm Jim with the ambulance service. Do you know your name? Gregory Fraser. Greg. All right, Greg. Do you remember what happened? Did you fall? Take anything. Greg frowned. No. I was at Tommy's card shop. Then everything went black. Next thing I know, I'm here. The paramedics helped him sit up. As they did, a small packet slipped from his coat pocket and landed on the ground. They aren't mine, Greg said immediately. Hours later, he found himself seated in a police interview room, staring at footage from a security camera. The sergeant folded his arms. Do you admit those drugs were found on your person? They were planted on me. You've seen the video. Do you agree it accurately shows what happened? Yes. And do you agree that the drugs were discovered on you? Greg hesitated. Yes. But they weren't mine. The sergeant's expression never changed. Gregory Fraser, you are being charged under Section 2.3 of the Drugs Act. Possession of a Class A substance, whether knowingly or unknowingly. The words landed like a hammer blow. Greg already knew what was coming. The law had changed everything. 2 years earlier, the government had introduced a controversial zero-tolerance policy. Under the new legislation, intent no longer mattered. If illegal drugs were found on someone, that person was arrested, charged, and rushed through a special court system. Supporters called it effective. Critics called it brutal. Yet drug-related deaths had fallen. Crime rates linked to narcotics had dropped. Public opposition slowly faded. Even powerful figures weren't spared. Celebrities, politicians, and wealthy business owners had all faced the same consequences. Now Greg was just another name on the list. Someone framed me, he said again. The sergeant sighed. We know. Greg looked up sharply. What? The man responsible has already confessed. Harold Entwistle. Harry. Greg stared in disbelief. Harry had been one of his oldest friends. He admitted planting the drugs, the sergeant continued. He's facing far more serious charges. Then you know I'm innocent. Innocent of planning it? Perhaps. Innocent under this law? No. Greg felt the room spin. The sergeant leaned forward. We don't have discretion. If we ignore the charge, we'd be breaking the law ourselves. For the first time, Greg truly understood. The system wasn't interested in fairness. Only compliance. The judge's recommendation was just that, a recommendation. Whether the prison governor honored it was entirely out of Greg's hands. As the courtroom emptied, reality settled heavily on his shoulders. 10 years. Convicted. Branded a criminal. Rumors had always circulated about certain drug offenders mysteriously vanishing instead of serving their sentences. Greg had dismissed those stories as wishful thinking invented by desperate inmates. Standing now in handcuffs, he was convinced they were nothing more than myths. The journey from the courtroom to the prisoner transport felt like a public execution. Every glance seemed loaded with judgment. Every whisper felt directed at him. He had pleaded guilty because there had been no alternative. Yet knowing it was the right choice did little to ease the shame. His parents were long gone, but he couldn't stop wondering what they would think. Their youngest son. A felon. Move. The barked order snapped him from his thoughts. A guard shoved him toward the transport van. No talking, convict. Greg climbed inside and froze. The blonde man from earlier was already seated there. Unlike before, he wasn't studying paperwork. He was studying Greg. Amusement danced behind his eyes. The doors slammed shut. The van pulled away. What? Greg finally asked. The man chuckled softly. It's rare to see someone manipulate the system so effectively. Greg frowned. I have no idea what you're talking about. Oh, I think you do. The man's gaze never left him. You knew Harold was dying. Greg's expression tightened. The statement wasn't a question. He was my friend. Not just a friend. A man facing months of agony. A man whose wife would be left with nothing. The blonde man leaned back. 30 minutes after Harold's execution, An anonymous transfer landed in his wife's account. A small smile tugged at Greg's lips. Andrea deserved every penny. She had sacrificed everything caring for her husband. Why tell me this now? Greg asked. Because the court didn't need to know. The man's smile widened. You found a way to help two people at once. That's unusual. Greg stared at him. Who are you? Someone who recognizes compassion when he sees it. Silence settled between them. Then the man spoke again. What if prison wasn't your only option? Greg's pulse quickened. The rumors. Could they actually be true? I thought those stories were nonsense. They are nonsense, the man replied. For most people. And for me. The blond man tilted his head. You're different. How? You help others instinctively. You sacrifice for people. And most importantly. His eyes narrowed. You're pure. Greg blinked. What does that mean? No tattoos. No piercings. No cosmetic alterations. No unnecessary surgeries. How could you possibly know that? The man tapped the strange pendant hanging around his neck. This tells me. Greg stared at the green-threaded necklace. That's impossible. The man's smile deepened. So is knowing something else. A chill crawled up Greg's spine. You've spent your entire life hiding it. Greg's breath caught. You possess a divided nature. The words hit like a physical blow. Nobody knew. Nobody. Yet somehow this stranger did. A masculine body, the man continued, and a feminine soul. Two forces constantly pulling against one another. Greg couldn't speak. Years of secrecy shattered in an instant. I can fix that. How? The man produced a small metallic device. It fit easily in his palm. Join us. Greg stared at it. Every instinct screamed that this was insane. Yet another part of him, the part that had lived with inner conflict for decades, desperately wanted to believe. Yes. The answer left his mouth before he could stop it. The stranger smiled. Excellent. He pulled out a phone. Poppy, it's Zane. Tell Sue we've found another one. The call ended. Then he raised the device toward Greg's face. A burst of flashing light exploded before his eyes. What was? Hold on to something. What? A deafening explosion interrupted him. The transport van lurched violently. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. The world spun. Once. Twice. Then darkness. When Greg regained consciousness, he was lying beside a wrecked road. Smoke drifted from the overturned van. Someone was dragging him to his feet. Zane. Nearby, another body was being placed inside the wreckage. A replacement. A dead man taking Greg's place. Come on, Zane said. Greg staggered after him. You promised you'd cure me. I did. But I'm still the same. Zane shook his head. No. You're not. Greg paused. Something felt different. The lifelong tension inside him had vanished. The constant push and pull. The quiet conflict he'd carried for as long as he could remember. Gone. Yet the absence felt disturbing. Like losing a limb. It feels wrong. It always does at first, Zane replied. I feel like part of me has been ripped away. Because it has. Greg stared at him. How do you know? Because I experienced it myself. Ahead, two cars arrived. One driver tossed a set of keys to Zane before immediately leaving in the second vehicle without saying a word. The operation was practiced. Efficient. Planned. Zane opened the passenger door. There are two factions in this world, Greg. Greg hesitated before climbing in. We believe humanity survives through change. And the others? They worship divided souls like yours. They believe the soul is perfect and the body should be altered instead. Greg frowned. And both groups oppose the drug laws. Yes. The engine started. The city slowly disappeared behind them. For the first time since his arrest, Greg had escaped prison. Yet freedom brought no comfort. His identity had been altered. His death had been faked. And he had just joined a secret war he barely understood. As the road stretched into the distance, Zane glanced across at him. Tell me about the school. The school. The one where you worked. Greg looked out the window. Hayfield. Good students. Good people. He paused. But I have a feeling that's not really what you're asking. Zane smiled. No. The car continued into the fading evening light. And for the first time, Greg wondered whether prison might have been the safer choice.